Thank you so, so very much. And I'd like to welcome everyone that is joining this webinar. And to make sure you're in the right place, this webinar is entitled Personalizing the Research That Impacts All of Us. And this is going to be an opportunity for you to learn about clinical research and examples related to those type of activities here in Northern Nevada. I want to take a moment and just say welcome to our audience who is joining us via Zoom, and those of you who are joining us via any other social media platform. If you're of my generation, that might mean Facebook Live. And if you're coming to us again through any of those modes and mediums, we are so happy that you're here with us today. My name is Tina Dortch. I work for the state of Nevada, and I manage the Office of Minority Health and Equity, and we're a program within the Department of Health and Human Services. I want to take a moment and just say thank you to the support of my amazing team, Carlos Ramirez Gomez and Alex Neal. And we also have the amazing support of ASL interpreters here today, all of us working together to make sure that this message is one that anybody that's joining us today can take part in. As I mentioned, we are a program of the Department of Health and Human Services. And what we do in the Office of Minority Health and Equity is work to ensure that resources can be accessed by any individual within the state. That means any individual, no matter your race, your ethnicity, your ability status, your sexual orientation, your age, anything that might prohibit you from getting access to information that you need to lead a very well-lived and healthy lifestyle. So we're very happy today to be doing something really, really unique. And that's a conversation about clinical trials and why it's important to diversify clinical trials. Well, the Office of Minority Health and Equity, we really work to create opportunities to create change that's systemic. That means it's going to have a long-term impact. It's going to really make a difference in the lives of individuals most at need and those at highest risk. And we want to point out that when it comes to clinical trial research, that this is an important month. This is October, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so there's no better time to talk about clinical trial research, is there, than one of this magnitude about breast cancer awareness. And by increasing anyone's health literacy, you really end up improving your own health outcomes. So what we're going to do today is going to do a few things, a couple of objectives we have. We have a couple of amazing individuals who are going to talk to you, and they're going to come together to talk about myths around the topic of clinical trial diversification. And before we even call these things myths, we're going to talk about what's behind them. Why are they escalated to this status of myth, and how they can really hold back individuals most in need from accessing resources that might come in the form of a clinical trial or a research opportunity. We're also going to talk a little bit about how the protocols have improved over time, because we know there has been legitimate medical racism that has affected us in this country. But we're going to talk about how overcoming those challenges have created great opportunities for minority populations so that you can benefit from what we call precision medicine through a clinical trial. And as a result of today, we're going to also meet a partner to NOMHE who is amazing in their own right, and that is individuals from the All of Us Project. You're going to hear from one of their virtual ambassadors to talk about what they do and how they do it with NOMHE. And at the end of the process, we're going to have Q&A. We're going to just let you ask questions of any of us, and we're going to answer them. We're not going to shy away from them. And lastly, when you walk away from this conversation as a participant today, you should feel empowered. You should feel empowered to have the information you need to independently make your own decisions. And you should feel motivated to want to engage in a research trial here locally. And we promise you that this process is not going to result in any type of a hard sell. We're not going to expect anything by way of enrollment or participation. We just want you to learn more about the topic. So having said that, I just want to say thank you and welcome. And I'm going to now turn the conversation over to our first presenter. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself by way of the beginning of his presentation. But if I would please turn the microphone over to Dr. Jaminsky. I am so happy to hear what you have to say, Doctor.
Thank you, Tina. Good evening. I guess I'll wait for the slides to get shared. Happy to talk about the importance of clinical research. And so just a brief introduction. My name is Joseph Jimsky. I am the Chief Scientific Officer of Renown Health. I am the principal investigator of the Healthy Nevada Project, which is a large genetics study happening in Nevada. And I am a professor of computational biology and genomic medicine at the Desert Research Institute. And next slide. I am an academic, and so I'm always required to show that I have no conflicts currently to declare. I receive funding, and my lab receives funding from the National Institutes of Health, from Gilead, which is a pharmaceutical company, and from Renown Health. And so with that, next slide. My goal today, motivation in speaking, is to try to support the incredible work of NOMHE and what Tina just said, and of the National Institutes of Health, who have really been an incredible driver of improvements in our understanding of human health and human health outcomes. And really to do that, to make those major changes in our understanding of why people live and why people die, we need participation in clinical research. Impossible to make those improvements without people getting involved. And I'm going to make the case that we need to, well, we absolutely need to do much better in diversifying the types of individuals. Everybody participating in research would change our understanding of medicine, whereas having not a diverse set of data will degrade our understanding. And there are some examples, even recently from COVID, lack of understanding the impact of skin color on being able to ascertain blood saturation from your finger. The first Apple Watch was designed with no women on the engineering team, and they failed to include the ability to predict menstrual cycles, which is a very easy thing to do. All this would have been improved with more diverse data to help us understand outcomes. Those are just two COVID and tech-related examples. But I think, just stepping back, there are four, in this day and age of post-COVID and 2022 technology, there's a few things to consider as to why I am a huge advocate for broad participation in research. First, I'm a geneticist, so I'm able to speak probably most articulately to this. Genomics, which is an individual thing, right? Everybody got their genome from mom or dad, whether or not you knew them, doesn't matter. There's no judgment there. Everybody received a copy from each side, and that makes you who you are, at least genetically. Obviously, lots of factors that make you who you are from a personality perspective. And that individuality is driving our understanding of medicine more and more. And so we need to understand that diversity when we're doing things like drug development. Secondly, data more increasingly in almost everything we do is driving decision making. Think of the data that is available on Facebook from these Facebook Live events, et cetera, from Amazon, you name it. Well, in healthcare, it's the same thing. More data will help us improve outcomes, and we get data voluntarily when we're doing research, and that's an important aspect. COVID-19, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, has really, our first pandemic in the tech era, in the era of personalized medicine, in the era of mass communication, mass travel, has really changed how we're thinking about improving our understanding of health and health outcomes. And then finally, and most importantly, from the perspective of clinical research, we have improved oversight, compliance, and ethics when we're doing these types of studies. And that should give some reassurances to people when participating. And I think there's an incredible team on this call to dispel some of the myths and misperceptions that you might have as to why you should feel more comfortable. I'm not going to say completely comfortable, but more comfortable participating in research. Next slide, please. So I think the first thing I'd like to do is just my definition simplified for a lay audience of what is clinical research. And I think there's a few key aspects that define it. The first is that it involves human subjects. So we could have a talk on mouse clinical research, and there is an ethics body that governs our treatment of animals. But for the purposes of this talk, clinical research is on human subjects. Clinical research typically studies an outcome or outcomes. So it looks at something in the future. So think vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine. You're studying, does the vaccine work? Are there fewer infections after people are vaccinated than when they're not vaccinated? Studies an outcome. And to do that, of course, the next point is it typically involves comparisons of groups. And here we could steer into, unethical territory of what those groups are. And we tend nowadays to try to randomize those groups so there aren't inherent biases in our understanding. Depending on studies, those groups might only be biological sex men, for example, if we're studying specific organs or a specific behavior. But there's typically a comparison of groups, and we try to be as unbiased as possible. And when we design a protocol which lays out, it's kind of the roadmap or the directions of how to do the research, we have to spell all of that out explicitly. You can't wing it. And then the final point to the definition, at least that I'm using here, a simplified definition, is that clinical research is active. So it's ongoing and it's prospective. And so it involves some interaction or intervention or a drug. It is not looking backwards on what happened. And the reason for that is that typically if you're looking backwards, let's say we're just collecting data from death certificates, you're not really doing clinical research on human subjects. You're looking at the only outcome of death. Or if you're using data that is completely de-identified, you're not actively engaging and trying to understand an outcome. So we call it active and prospective versus, let's say, passive and retrospective. So that's my definitions for this talk. Hopefully it's simple enough. Next slide, please. There are some important key milestones, and there are some key stains on our lack of human decency when it came to doing research. And so these key milestones, I've used the positive outcome rather than to talk about the disgraces, because I think we don't want to do that. And so in 1947, after the Nuremberg trial, there was the Nuremberg Code, and that really set in motion our understanding that we should be treating all human beings with dignity and respect rather than as experimental objects. And then in 1964, these were further embodied in the Declaration of Helsinki, which again established some codes to doing research, right? First, do no harm, and helped guide an increase in human experimentation that needed to happen because of more drug development, more biomedical improvement. So that's a positive outcome. And it acknowledged the fact that we can't design drugs or interventions, new things to put inside the body to keep it from failing, et cetera, whether it's something as simple as a hip, a titanium hip, or a new heart valve. We can't do that without actually making sure it's going to work and help improve the human condition. So you can't just wing it. And then finally, the United States further amplified things in 1979 in a report called the Belmont Report, which is really guiding all of the work that informs clinical trials and clinical research and human subject research in the United States. And there's some important aspects to that, and that's on the next slide. What does that really mean? What are our North Stars for doing clinical research? And so those North Stars, or major principles, are summarized in these 4 bullet points. First is that the research has to have respect of persons. And so it needs to, and this is the language that is used out of the Belmont Report. This is not my language. It needs to respect human beings. And this obviously came out of obviously the horrors of what happened in Nazi Germany, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, et cetera. We have to respect human beings when performing research on them, because that's what is happening. We're studying an outcome. The entire protocol and the reason for doing the research has to have beneficence, meaning the outcomes of it have to improve human health. So you cannot say, I'm just really interested in looking at some aspect of the human anatomy, and I want to design a protocol to, when people are cut up, start jiggering around in the human body. That is not for the benefit of humanity. It does not have beneficence. The potential drug has to have beneficence. The intervention, the valve, whatever it is going to be, has to make an improvement. There has to be justice. The protocol has to be respectful, and it has to be grounded in all of these principles for individuals. So in other words, justice does not look like taking cells out of Henrietta Lacks, who had ovarian cancer, without her consent and knowledge, and then propagating it without the family's consent and knowledge. And for those of you who want to read about clinical research, and one of the best books on it is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. I highly recommend it. And then the final aspect is that clinical research has to also have non-maleficence, meaning it cannot be harmful to the individual. And when studies occur, and occasionally we do get it wrong, when studies occur and there's a bad outcome, we have to halt the trial. And so these are some of the protections in place. Respective persons means you get their consent when they participate. So when I participated in my study, the Healthy Nevada Project, I consented. I said, I understand why I'm doing this, and I understand the benefits. I understand the risks. The risks are mild, but nonetheless, they're there. And I'm willfully and willingly participating. So these are four important aspects. Non-maleficence comes into play when particularly we're dealing with experimental drugs, and particularly when we don't have great baselines and we don't have something to compare it to, and there could be negative outcomes. Think of a disease that has no cure, and we are looking for experimental options. Next slide, please. So that's kind of the background of how the ethics of and the involvement of human beings in clinical trials and clinical research occurs, and how governing bodies have evolved to put certain protections in place. I'd like to just mention, like, what are you talking about? What is a clinical trial? What is clinical research? A clinical trial has a real specific meaning, and the goal, usually, there are of course exceptions, is to test, usually in a randomized and controlled way, and that's important for understanding these outcomes, right? It has to have an outcome, to test an intervention, and an intervention could be a vaccine, it could be a pill that doctors think is going to improve heart disease. It could be something that you stick in the human body to help it avoid, let's say, a heart attack, like a stent. And so pharmaceutical companies and researchers at the National Institutes of Health will conduct clinical trials, and they're done typically, again, in 4 phases. And the first phase actually doesn't even test the outcome. It really is for safety. And so phase 1 of a clinical trial, we don't have a lot of phase 1 clinical trials in Northern Nevada. I believe there are some at the VA. These are typically very small studies, 10 to 50 people. And the goal of that study is to test the safety of the intervention, drug, heart valve, widget that is put in the human body, technique that might require a different type of suturing and a suture, etc. It tests the safety of it and how to administer it, so how to perform it. And this obviously is done on a small group because it is required to really understand the safety, because we have to have this non-maleficence. We have to make sure we're not hurting anybody. And I would argue that phase 1 is really where we should be starting with diversity and inclusion, because if we are not understanding that human variability is broad, drugs act differently on different people, period. And so diversity really needs to be in every single phase of clinical research. So once you get your drug or your intervention past phase 1, you go into phase 2, and that's where you start understanding if it actually works. And so now you know it's safe, you know how much to administer within a range because of safety. And so you're saying, okay, is the treatment or is the drug working? And phase 2 is a slightly larger population, and it's testing that aspect. Like, is this something that shows promise? So think of when the first COVID vaccines came out. Once they showed that they were safe, they went on to see if they were working. And then finally, you get to phase 3 of the path where then it might become publicly available. And I'll save phase 4 to separate that specifically. And phase 3 is where we have large numbers of individuals testing if the treatment or the drug works better than what is available. Because if it doesn't work better, then we're violating our principles of doing human subject research, and we should probably stop, right? We need to be doing things better. This isn't to make more money. This isn't to have a different option because, Nevada wants to do it differently than California. This really has to be about making it be better. And again, I would argue this is an area where diversity is really important because it's not always acting the same on individuals. So those are the 3 main phases. Once you get past phase 3, the FDA will normally approve the drugs. And then phase 4 occurs during the lifetime of the drug. And it relates to longer term questions. And those questions could be the longevity of improvement to your health, looking at rarer events. And so again, here, we get into complex ethics, like, is a rare event acceptable? These are just really difficult questions to answer. And we have to balance it against how many individuals had lives saved because of the drug. And so phase 4 studies that much longer term aspect when we already know that the treatment works better than what's available and it's safe on the general population. So that's the phases of clinical trials. And again, there's no hard sells here. If you've had family who've been sick, my dad had cancer when I was very young and he was very young. You do anything. And so you enter into clinical trials sometimes because it's your last hope and you're hoping that we make breakthroughs. And again, those breakthroughs should be available to everyone. And I think I have 2 more slides, perfect timing. I'll be really quick. I just wanted to give an example. Okay, so I have 3 more slides. Why does this all matter? It all matters because this research has had profound impacts on health, period. There's a tremendous amount of data showing the improvements to our understanding of human health outcomes. In the United States, we've had and around the world, massive increases in life expectancy because of improvements in medicine, reductions in heart disease because of work happening in clinical trials at the NIH, improvements in cancer outcomes, and then obviously new vaccines and vaccine technologies, which have really come to the fore because of COVID-19. Next slide. And so examples from just my world of genetics, and I think genetics is really, a hodgepodge of human history, human migration, et cetera. Why it's important to understand your health and why we need to understand human variability and have the most diverse representation. This just came out a few days ago. Human leukocyte antigen alleles, so those are spots on your DNA associated with COVID-19 vaccine immunogenicity and the risk of breakthrough infections. And so translated, that means that certain aspects of your innate immune system are variable, and that variability can lead to risks in breakthrough infection. Well, if we don't know that variability, we wouldn't be able to make these insights and improve vaccines and improve health. That's the simple translation of why we want diverse understanding of cohorts, as they're called. That's populations of individuals performing, being involved in research. Next slide. This is just an example using a map of diversity of an aspect of the innate immune system across populations. And you can just look at the blue as one type of variability in a specific gene. here for toll receptors, which modulate the immune system. And then yellow is a different kind. And you can see the population in Mexico is different than Puerto Rico, is different than Colombia, is different than in parts of Africa and Finland, et cetera. And if we don't have these data, we can't understand that the variety of human responses to certain diseases, in this case, infectious diseases. Next slide. This is just another example. And again, showing the variability of protection, and I left out protection and severe impact from some of our ancestors, in this case, Neanderthals, impact our response to COVID-19. And again, without these data, we would not be able to make these insights. We would not be able to make improvements to how we treat this, highly infectious disease and how we treat diseases in the future. And so with that, just a few, what I like to call take-home points, which hopefully will spawn some questions and also give you assurances. Clinical research is absolutely necessary for the advancement of medicine. That is, cannot be stated enough. We unfortunately have to do research on ourselves to understand how to improve our health. And that research improves lives and health outcomes. We know that because we've increased life expectancy significantly. We've had a little bit of a negative impact because of COVID-19 and the opioid crisis, but we've really markedly improved the lives of all human beings around the world, some more than others, unfortunately. Clinical research is regulated, and it is normally ethically sound and beneficial to society. Of course, I can't say that it's 100% ethically sound, but massive improvements in compliance, in our understanding of the respect and justice that all humans deserve, really is a better North Star than it once was. And then finally, and most importantly, if we do not have diverse and inclusive clinical research and clinical trials, we will not understand the impacts of those interventions on all human beings. And so therefore, the final point, if we were to have a more diverse and inclusive clinical research infrastructure in the United States, which is what all of us is trying to do, that diverse infrastructure will improve health outcomes. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you for your attention, and I'll turn it back to Tina.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jimsky. I just have to share a very interesting point. I was kicked out of the system for a portion of your remarks. So we always have that fun situation happen when we do these things virtually, but I, having reviewed your slides, know that it was a very, very, very informative presentation. And what we're going to do, just to allow me to get caught up, is pivot over to our ambassador from the All of Us program. And to help us understand the role that they play and the relationship that they have with the Office of Minority Health and Equity, I'd like to turn our attention to May Sandberg. May, do you mind just telling us a little bit about the program, how you work with organizations like NOMHE? We have a very long history with the organization. It goes back a few years and of in-person experiences and virtual experiences, but do you mind just telling us what it is you do and why it's so important that you do it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for turning that over, Tina. And, thank you so much, Dr. Jimsky, for what you shared with us, which is so, so important. The value of understanding what medical research is, why it's important that we participate, and really just breaking it down for us, those of us who are not academics. So to Tina's point, my name is May Sandberg, and I am with the All of Us Research Program, which is part of the National Institutes of Health. And I would like to thank everyone who is here today and extend all of us a little bit of grace. I know we've had a few technical hiccups, but the message is still very clear. We are here to help educate everyone on the power of their uniqueness, who they are, and that every person in the United States matters and should have and is welcome to participate in this free medical research study. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about something very important, which is improving the future of health for all of us. So before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself. Full disclosure, guys, this work is my personal and professional passion. I've worked in efforts of equity, diversity, and inclusion for the past 20 plus years, and I am actually a participant in this program. I don't just work for the All of Us Research Program, but as a bisexual, Jewish, Mexican-American woman, think of that intersectionality, I have been underrepresented in medical research. And I'm also the first person in my family to ever participate in medical research. And why is that huge? It's because both sides of my family have a strong distrust of medical research and doctors. But you know, what really made the difference for me was what we all survived over these past 2 years, which is a global pandemic. And all of a sudden, I found myself in a situation where I really wanted to do something from home, something that I could participate, because I'm sure many of us felt a little hopeless and scared during that time. I also have learned through my participation that I do have a genetic variance that makes our family more susceptible to things like leukemia, and it affects the males on the Jewish side of my family. And on the Mexican side of my family, we have diagnoses of mental health, and we work really hard to destigmatize that. So now that you know a little bit about me, let's talk about what we're going to share today. So during today's presentation, we'll discuss what is the All of Us Research Program, who is involved with the program, and most importantly, how you can get involved, because improving the future of health can start with you. So for those of us who are on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, go ahead and type it in the chat. More likely than not, other people have a similar question, and it might be a safe way for you to pose some questions for us. So feel free to drop that in the chat. All right, guys, so what is health research? Well, Dr. Jimsky just told us. So just to do a very brief recap, research is the process of finding out new things, right? Health research is the process of finding out new things about improving people's healthcare. It's also important because we all want to live long and healthy lives, right? And people who conduct health research, for example, the National Institutes of Health, they're identifying better ways to keep us all healthy. And health research can only help people of all backgrounds if people of all backgrounds get involved. And this is the foundation of the All of Us Research Program. For example, according to the NIH, fewer than 10% of all of us here in the United States have ever even participated in clinical studies. So what is All of Us? It's a good question. We are a large program led by the National Institutes of Health that's working to improve healthcare through research. And unlike studies that focus on one disease or one group of people, All of Us is building this beautiful diverse data set that can inform thousands of studies on a variety of health conditions. The program does not run research itself. We gather the data and make it broadly accessible for researchers to apply and be approved to make its use to make discoveries. And we're a longitudinal effort, which that means is it's going to last for a while, 10 years or more. And our goal is to gather data from at least 1 million people or more who really reflect our beautiful diversity in the United States. And we're actually a little more than halfway there. We're at about 500,000 plus participants, and that's huge. We were told that this couldn't happen, and it really is. And what this does is it'll help us enable prevention and treatment and care for all of us and some medical breakthroughs. So how do we tailor treatment? Well, it's through this thing called precision medicine. Dr. Jimsky talked about that, right? Precision medicine is healthcare that's based on you as an individual. It takes into account factors like where you live, what you do, and your family history. And the goal of precision medicine is to be able to tell people the best ways to stay healthy. If someone does get sick, precision medicine may help healthcare teams find the treatment that works best for them. And researchers will use the data participants share to learn how these factors affect our health. And these unique variables also mean that medical treatment that works for one person may not work for another. And for instance, many medical conditions, such as high blood pressure, for example, these are treated with a standard medication given to all patients, and then through trial and error, were used to determine the best medication and the dosage. Imagine a scenario where an individual's treatment is already customized for a person's based on their factors known about them. That would be really awesome. And the All of Us research program aims to advance precision medicine and focus on the individual. It takes into account things like our lifestyle, our environment, and of course, our genetic factors. And these are considered when physicians determine the best course of treatment to provide the best care possible for each patient. So why is diversity so important? Well, All of Us is asking a lot of people to join. And in order for us to do our best work, we want everyone to be involved. Participants are from different races, ethnicities, age groups, and regions of the country. It's also diverse in gender identity, sexual orientation, and health status. It used to be that these things would exclude you from health research. That's not the case with the All of Us research program. So did you know that the majority of health research has been conducted with middle-aged Caucasian men as participants? Dr. Jimsky talked about the iWatch, and we didn't have women on that board, so we kind of missed something there. That means that the medicine that research ends up being designed is specifically for that demographic. In other words, like myself, I'm not a middle-aged Caucasian man, so maybe the medicines that are given to me are not the best for me and my body. Also, Hispanics and Latinos like myself, we make up 18.5% of the population, but have only participated in 1% of previous studies. Similarly, our friends and family in the African American community make up 13.4% of the population, but have only been represented in 5% of clinical trials. So what does this all mean? Well, by studying data from a diverse group of people, researchers can learn more about what makes people sick and what helps them stay healthy. And this may help you and your family make better health decisions and help researchers find out why your community is more likely to suffer certain health conditions. So it's important to break this down in a way that hopefully makes sense. So diversity is important because we, those who have been underserved in research, have not been included enough in research. And because of this, we have been left behind. And we don't want that to continue to happen. So All of Us is leading the way to help influence how health research is conducted, and the diversity is super important to all communities. Something that's also important is data security and privacy. It can be scary to share your information. So the program takes security and privacy very seriously. It's the top priority in the program, and we use the latest technology to help keep data private and safe. Identifiable information like our name and address, these are stripped away from our samples, and instead we're assigned a unique code. And when the research does begin, researchers sign an affidavit saying that they will not try to find out who you are. Surveys that you answer and all personal information are kept safe on an encrypted server with limited access. And the program even has certificates of confidentiality from the government to help fight any legal demands to give out information that could identify you. And just like our banking systems, privacy and security can never be guaranteed 100%, but the risk can be minimized as much as possible. We mentioned this earlier. This is about education. This is not to make people sign up, but to give you as much information as possible to make an informed decision. Your participation is voluntary. You are free to share as little or as much as you feel comfortable with. Once again, I became a participant because I felt my information was safe and secure. of course, I work for the, for the program, but I also wanted to make sure that I could model that risk of vulnerability for my community. So you're probably thinking, that's all great information, May, but at the end of the day, how does this benefit me? And that's a really great question. So by joining the program, you can leave a legacy to your children, to your family, and to this world, and future generations by supporting potential breakthroughs in areas such as cancer, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, and depression. Help represent your community in important studies that may lead to new research findings, treatments, and cures. And of course, you learn about your own health. If you do decide to participate and share your DNA with us, you will receive free ancestry information as well as genetic information as to predispositions and conditions. So we are making our way across the United States with the All of Us Journey, which is our traveling exhibit. And we are currently making our way across the state of Washington until October the 13th, and then making our way to Portland, and then making our way to Oregon, and then making our way to Nevada. So I would like to show you a short video of what to expect if you do come out and visit the journey in person. Thank you so much for sticking around and hearing information about the All of Us research program. We are delivering one of the largest, richest biomedical data sets that is broadly available and secure. Together, we can help make a difference in speeding up research and improving the care for all of our communities. And if you would like to learn, you're very welcome. I dropped in the chat our link so that you can learn more about where we are coming and our connection with NOMHE, which you guys are amazing, amazing partners. Thank you so, so much for all that you do and all the care that you provide to those that you serve in the state of Nevada. We love you.
Oh, thank you so much, May, and Dr. Jimsky as well. We want to make sure we save time now. We have a few questions that were posed through Zoom, and there were a couple of other questions. And I'm looking right now, they're coming at me from multiple platforms. So one says, what are the hopes you have for research in the state? And this is a question for Dr. Jimsky. What do you hope to see as a result of increased diversification and trials going on here in our state?
Yeah, so I think the future in Nevada, because of studies like Healthy Nevada Project, All of Us are improving the opportunities and for involvement. And by improving the opportunities for involvement, we're also improving the access to these cutting edge studies. So, you know, the examples that I use come from personal experience based on having so much cancer in my life. And that is, you know, think of, you know, some of the great academic medical centers around the country and folks who live nearby them. And if they have serious disease that requires participating in a clinical trial in hopes of improving their health, that access is a lot easier than it is for many Nevadans who might have to travel. And so as we improve research here, that means we improve inherently the clinical trials that are available to our citizens. And I think that's really important. I think the future of research in general is so strong because of these large studies that have really helped us. And I think a lot of them have been amplified by COVID. And so I think the follow-on question that individual asked was, what do you say to a person who doesn't have much to contribute to medical research? I would say it's very difficult to know how much you have to contribute. One of the ways that research is conducted is by making sure that we have folks who have a specific illness and do not have a specific illness. And oftentimes we learn just as much about people who don't have an illness. I'm thinking of a major discovery in cardiovascular disease that led to an incredible drug that lowered cholesterol. And so we found that by looking at people who had low cholesterol, not high cholesterol, just as an example. Studying the folks who don't get COVID, the COVID dodgers, as they're called. This was a big story recently. Understanding the diversity of impact of specific drugs on metabolism. Metabolism has a lot of variability based on ancestral background, just because of the way that admixing or genetic diversity occurs. And so understanding how one population metabolizes an SSRI for mental illness versus another. And as May said, one dose fits all is not the world we live in. And so I would say folks that they consider themselves normal, participating is really important because it grounds our research. And I would not assume you are normal. I would assume you are individual and you have a lot to contribute to our understanding of diseases, particularly these really complex diseases that also involve, as May said in that nice slide, your environment, right? Your behaviors, your life experiences. We've neglected these often, and with these large studies, we're now able to include them in the calculus of how a drug or how an intervention is working.
Thank you for that, Dr. Jaminski. I want to point out a comment that was shared in the chat box here on Zoom, and it really does serve as a testimonial from someone. And I think it does bear me reading it into the for everyone to hear. And it says that Don G, and they identify as a specialized patient for the University of Nevada, Reno's School of Medicine. And they say that influencing the mental aspects of medical students and the methods that they put into practice is incredibly satisfying. So I think that it behooves us to hear those kind of comments and to give that kind of an affirmation that the practices being put into place when it comes to research being conducted by the university is actually resonating with people. So thank you for sharing that message, Don. I have another question, and I think either May or Dr. G, you can answer it, if I may call you Dr. G. And they're asking, how can people find out about trials that are going on in Nevada? How do you actually engage?
That's a great question. For observational studies, so not non-interventional, like all of us, Healthy Nevada Project, I guess you can hear about them through a variety of channels. Typically for clinical trials, interventional clinical trials, Renown has multiple ongoing. You would hear about them through your doctor. And I think an important point of both some progressive changes that have happened in Nevada's call for diversity of clinical trials, and part of NOMHE's existence is in making sure that our doctors and our clinicians and our providers are shouting from the rooftops to all individuals who might qualify for a clinical trial. And so we can get away from this large participation of largely Caucasian or white women. And so typically you'd hear about them from your doctor. If you had a specific disease, a condition, there might be an ongoing clinical trial. For example, if you have a high chance of cardiovascular disease, there are some new clinical trials for some new types of medicines. And if you were at really high risk, your doctor might say, I'd recommend joining the study. Now, those would be phase 3. So from my diagram, that would be after safety and efficacy, and trying to understand if it's better than what the doctor would have you do. And if you are an individual who might have previously been excluded from them or feel like you're excluded, I would maybe Tina can answer some methods that we have available in Nevada to increase, but I would also say, ask your doctor, particularly if you're high family risk for heart disease, ask your doctor, hey, are there any clinical trials or anyone I should talk to? Because I'm really concerned about my personal health and making sure I'm around to do X, Y, and Z. So asking your doctor is great, but maybe there's a way that NOMHE can get involved too. So I'll let Tina take that.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Jaminski. We at our DHHS website do advocate individuals to use the national database that can be filtered by state. I believe it's clinicaltrials.gov. And I think May be able to correct me if I'm wrong.
No, clinicaltrials.gov.
That's
yes.
correct.
And
Yeah.
you can filter by state, and you can even further filter and refine that search, based on themes and topics of search and research. But May, did you want to add anything to that answer as we start winding down on our Q&A portion?
Absolutely. You are correct in directing them to the clinicaltrials.gov site. I also encourage people to think about clinical trials in a reverse mindset. Typically, when we consider our participation in trials, at least for me, my understanding, my non-academic understanding is I'm terminal and now I am eligible to participate in something that's experimental. I would really like to encourage everyone who's watching us today to think about it on the flip side. If you participate in things like the All of Us Research Program and have access to information about yourself, including your genetics, how that might impact the opportunities for you to be able to be on the front end, on the preventative end, not on the end cycle of where you might connect now with a clinical trial research study. Because of that, I think there's this misnomer, at least for me, like I said, personally, that was how I thought that you were eligible. And that is a lack of understanding, a lack of education that I, as a person of who I represent in my community, maybe didn't have access to that, or I had to know a special doctor, or I had to be part of a special system that made me, that especially invited me to participate in this. And that's why working, and I'm so passionate about this, because you can be you anywhere in the United States and have equitable access to your ancestry and genetic information for free. So I hope that people who can have, the privilege of being on the front end can participate. And for those who are looking to connect with clinical trials, that you do search those through the clinicaltrials.gov and try to connect. All of those efforts collectively will improve the future of health.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. I want to wrap up by saying there is an opportunity to learn more and to engage more. And I think we have a flyer that we can share, and it talks about next week, October 25th and the 26th, that those you see on the call right now, Dr. Jaminski and All of Us representatives, we're going to be hosted at the Nevada Health Center's location at 3325 Research Way. I didn't make up that name of the road. That just happens to be the name of the road they're located on. And both of those days, the events will be happening from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Now, on the 25th, that day is going to be a very special day. Dr. Jaminski and some of his other professional colleagues are going to be there tabling to then answer questions and tell you about the projects they're working on. And again, this is a no pressure opportunity to learn more, and you can engage as much or as little as you want. And then for those who might want to think about it a little bit, or maybe tell your friends about it, we'll be there the next day as well. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our remarks, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we are so happy to say that the Mama Van will be there. And that's another opportunity to come out and to just get some information. If not a screening, then get information. And some of the other individuals that are going to be tabling that day, we're going to have representatives from the department's Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion Unit. The Nevada Indian Commission is going to be there. Accept, we love Accept. That is Access for Community and Cultural Education Programs and Training. They will be there. High Sierra AHEC, the Area Health Education Center. They're all about diversifying our workforce in the health space. They're going to be there. We're also going to have folks, as we said, from Renown and the UNR School of Medicine, Renowned Cancer Institute. And then also a very good friend of NOMHE is going to be the Reno Sparks NAACP. They have a very robust health subcommittee that is doing great work for the community. And so we just want everybody to come out to join people like Northern Nevada Hopes. That is another community-based FQHC that's doing great work, not just in the clinical space, but also behavioral and mental health. And then lastly, a very unique partner to this particular lineup is going to be Moms for Clean Air. They're going to be there talking about how the quality of the air we breathe can affect our health. So please, if you have any interest or are curious at all, or are even ready just to join and enroll, join us next Tuesday and Wednesday. There's the flyer. We can share it with you if you want more information. This has been an amazing hour and a half. Thank you to our speakers. We can't say that enough and too many times. And we're going to just then wrap up and close with that robust thank you, and we wish you good night.
Thank you so much, Tina.